We are continuing to follow breaking news out of the White House, where President Trump's economic advisor, Gary Cohn, has announced that he is resigning. I want to turn to Steve Portnoy with CBS News Radio with more. Steve, we know that Cohn was opposed to these tariffs on steel and aluminum. Are you surprised by this resignation?
Not entirely surprised, Renee. This is something that, frankly, Washington had expected for some time. Gary Cohn was thought to be someone who was rather privately very skeptical of and critical of various moves the president has made. He's issued a statement in which he says it's been an honor to serve his country and enact pro-growth economic policies to benefit the American people. He points to the passage of the tax cut bill at the end of last year. The president, in a statement, says that his national economic advisor has done a superb job in driving that agenda. Gary Cohn served from the first days of Donald Trump's presidency, so that means essentially after more than 400 days, he is now leaving. And Rena, you mentioned a key reason why it seems as though Gary Cohn felt that it was time for him to go. There was the decision on the part of President Trump to enact these 25% tariffs on aluminum, 10% tariff, or rather 25% tariffs on steel, 10% tariffs on aluminum, in the face of arguments that it would lead to a trade war and negative consequences for American manufacturers, American farmers, American consumers. Gary Cohn was part of the globalist wing of the president's advisors. In fact, he was a leading member, a former Goldman Sachs executive, who worried that these tariffs and other steps the president might take on trade would have negative ramifications. As the head of the National Economic Council, Gary Cohn was one of the leading advisors to the president on economic matters. And while he did help convince Congress to pass the tax reform bill, he was not successful in persuading the president to not take more aggressive moves on trade.
We've got a statement from the president as well saying Gary has been my chief economic advisor and did a superb job in driving our agenda, helping to deliver historic tax cuts and reforms and unleashing the American economy once again. He's a rare talent, and I thank him for his dedicated service to the American people. Is he leaving on good terms, Steve? Do we know?
Well, I assume so. Look, the White House says that this has been in the works for several weeks now, that Gary Cohn approached the president, said it was time for him to transition out. He's expected to stay on for a few weeks, that this is not his last day. It's interesting to me, Rena, that this announcement comes just really a couple of hours after a news conference the president held at the White House with the Prime Minister of Sweden, in which he was asked about turnover inside his White House. And the president said, hey, look, people come and people go, but he said that there's tremendous energy inside his administration. And he even said that it's wrong to think that people are shying away from jobs in his White House. He says everybody wants to work for him.
I want to ask you who you think. Do we know who might potentially fill the job? Is there anybody waiting in the wings?
Well, the president, you look at who the advice the president is taking right now from people when it comes to, for example, trade. One of the leading figures within this White House, and more powerful figures, not to say that he's necessarily going to move over, but it's the president's point man on trade, and that's Peter Navarro, who is an academic and an author and someone who's a leading critic of China, someone who has the president's ear on being tough on matters of trade and other issues when it comes to this idea that the United States is getting stepped on by other countries. You heard the president echo those themes today when he was asked to defend his tariff policy in the face of direct criticism from a European leader. And the Prime Minister of Sweden said that he thinks that tariffs are a bad idea, and he has all these reasons why Europe feels this way. But the president's position on this is that he ought to do what's best for American workers. And in the case of the aluminum and steel workers, the president feels that protectionist measures to raise the price of imported steel and imported aluminum is one surefire way to ensure that American steel workers and American aluminum workers continue manufacturing those products here in this country.
We are continuing to follow the breaking news. President Trump's top economic advisor, Gary Cohn, has announced that he will be resigning. I want to thank Steve Portnoy from CBS News Radio for joining us.